Welcome to the Value Maker podcast. My name is Ryan Purvis. I'm your host, supported by Heather Bicknell, as we meet with the people that make the digital workspace work. It's about the technology, it's about improving people's work experience and finding the return on value.
Can't believe it's November.
It's hard to believe. I know. Almost done with the year.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy how fast it's gone. How has the year treated you?
Ooh, that's a big retrospective question. I think decently overall. Yeah, not a bad year. Trying to think, I don't know. I feel like a week goes by and I forget what has happened. So in a sense, I feel like the year's just started. But then trying to think about what are the big things that have happened this year. I know I was just traveling, as were you. So that's front of mind.
How was your trip?
It was great. So I started off in Ireland for work. Ooh, nice background.
Yeah. You.
Looks great. And then we went over to Rome for just holiday vacation, and that was amazing. So, second time I've been in my life, but saw some things I've seen before, saw some new things, did underground Colosseum tour and stuff like that this time. So,
Nice.
the
Was that
technology is wild
technology of what, from the Roman era
from the
or?
Romans. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah. So, the one that always gets me is the aqueducts. There's
Mm,
like the two that stick out in my mind thinking about it right now. Just the way they brought water in to the city, how it fed the baths and the fountains, and even in Rome today, you can go around and use all of the public fountains and fill your water bottle and get a drink if you need to. So that's an amazing piece of technology. It's obviously central to warding off disease and things like that, how they figured out how to do that. And then I had been to the Colosseum as a kid and going back now as an adult and doing the underground tour. The amount of sophistication of the elements they had to put on a show, elevators that would have like animals or other gladiators just rise out of the sand. It gave me such a picture of what it would have looked like to have been a spectator there. And the new one that I learned about was they had like thinner slots where they would push up like scenery backdrops. So like they'd make a
yeah.
desert scene or things like that. So I don't know if you think about today, the like going to the theater or the spectacular way in which they put on those brutal shows was a feat of engineering.
They were a pretty sophisticated organization.
Yeah.
Empire. That's the right word. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I remember studying them years and years ago. And I'm trying to remember, and I think they just got too big, too spread out, and then lost the control of everything. But when they were small and they controlled everything, they innovated. They really were mature and just grew too big. It's actually interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen this diagram somewhere. I'll try to find it, where they show you civilization, obviously like Asia, Europe, etc., and how each of them had progressed at the same timeline and where each nation was from a sophistication point of view. And it's actually quite weird to see how immature one was versus the other one. And the Chinese were way ahead, I think, of the Romans in some respects, as with the Arabs. That's
Yeah,
what the
China
Arabs
and you're like
think.
Egypt. And then you have
Yeah.
Greece. Then Rome's just they managed to borrow a lot of good things too from
I think
where they
that's,
conquered. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's the important part is they grew through conquering as did Genghis Khan and his sort of era. Yeah, it's actually, I'll try finding because I'm bastardizing as I talk about, but I've got it wrong. But yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting how that stuff.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Find the visual.
Yeah, it is interesting because we always think of, I say we, that it's a linear timescale. That if you look at the past, it's all the same linearly. But actually it's not. It's actually because, and this is where the internet has been such a phenomenal thing, because civilization, as it was spread out, everyone in their own pockets was maturing at their own speed. And now because of the internet, everyone's getting the same information almost at the same time. We'll do this episode now. It'll be distributed. Everyone in the world can see it and hear it and whatever. If you think back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that wasn't possible. You know, if you wanted to get a TV show, you had to get it on VHS 30 years ago or Betamax. And then it was CD, DVD, and then it was whatever. So now you just stream it. You don't even think about it. So in those days, for them to do stuff to a Roman era, whatever it was, it would take them weeks and months to do something, to travel and send a message and give me your fastest rider, and they'll ride through the week to deliver this message. And a lot can happen in a week. Even today, a lot can happen in a week, but you still get instant messaging. Literally instant messaging. Yeah, it's fascinating when you think about it, how far we've come as a civilization in some respects and how far we haven't come.
Yeah. We're not building. There was technology the Romans had. I think recently I heard we figured out Roman concrete, however they built it so it can expand and contract and live on for centuries. But the other one, at least I haven't fact checked this, but multiple guides mentioned that like the solid marble or stone columns that we don't know, like we can't replicate how they built those, which I thought was interesting. So whatever their
Yeah,
technique was.
there's a few of those things, and you're just never sure look at how AI generations come in. There's videos from Elon Musk, for example, like you don't know if he actually said something or not. And you see some of these where they've said, oh, here's a pipe that was cut by an Egyptian tool, but we can't cut it to the same accuracy as this tool could. Or it requires our sophisticated tool to do what they were doing with a less sophisticated tool. And you don't know if that's a real image or a fake image or whatever it is. But I do believe that there is stuff that was probably built, designed, that we just haven't thought, like it's been lost in generations because of wars and whatever else, that the technique is almost taken for granted, or it's lost and rediscovered because there probably wasn't a reason to use it again until whatever's happened. So it's so much
a lot of opulence we don't indulge in modern day, represented in ancient Rome. How was Paris? I want to hear about Paris.
Paris was great. So we've been silly because we've been living here a long time. We haven't used the tunnel as much as we should have. And it's for us, it's an hour and a half drive to Folkestone, which is where the train takes you from. And you drive onto the train, and then it's a 35-minute train to Calais. And you come out and you're basically you drive out onto the French highway and you're off. And this time around, we did it's called Flexi, I think, or basically it's the business priority version where you can take any train you like. And there's also a lounge that you can go into before you board. I don't know if you've ever done this tunnel. How it works, and this is why I love it. So you basically drive into the facility, and there's a duty-free area, which the first time we did it, we went there, looked to it, but this time we skipped it. And then you basically drive straight to immigration. So you go to the UK immigration, so you give your passports in and they check it, etc. And then you drive to the French immigration. And you might be security checked through this process, but it depends. Sometimes we were this time, but it's not major. And because we'd bought this pass, we had a fast pass lane to go in anyway, but it wasn't busy. Last time it was busy, this time it wasn't. But you basically go through your UK and your French immigration passport controls straight away. And then you just drive down a long road, and depending on the size of your vehicle, you go in different lanes. And we went into this lounge, and basically they give you a packet and they say, fill yourself up. And you've got this, sort of business class lounge of food and drinks and whatever, and Starbucks coffee and whatever. And they've got trains going every 35 minutes or 30 minutes. So we basically filled up. It was my wife, my mother-in-law, my two kids. So it was great for us because we'd already packed snacks for the drive because we were driving up to Bruges because we'd never been to Bruges, which is a 3-hour drive on the other side. You load up and then you drive down this path. And because we're in the fast pass, we basically drove straight around all the queues of people in their cars waiting to board because it's a car carrier. And you drive in, and then they you drive down inside the train. You just enter from the side and then you drive down. We've got a big car, so we're on a large vehicle thing. And you basically just drive down till you reach a point you can't drive anymore. Turn your car off. They put in some chocks to make sure you don't move. And then you just wait. And the train pulls off, and then you go down under this tunnel. And it's worth watching the YouTube video on how they built this tunnel, because they built it from two sides, and they used lasers to basically line up the dig. And it's perfectly, and I say perfectly straight. They lined it up and they reached each other. There's two tunnels actually next to each other, and then a middle tunnel, emergency escape tunnel, which they've got all the pictures inside as you're on the train. You can get it because once you're in the car and until they start, they say stay in your car. But once the train starts going, you get out your car and you can do whatever you need to. There's toilets and stuff. There's no service on board, which obviously you buy your stuff before you get on. But there's all sorts of the history and how they designed it, how the emergency stuff, all that stuff's on the side of the panels of the train compartment. When I say you 335 minutes, we still have this internet connectivity. So I worked the whole drive, which I thought was quite amazing. I was able to sit and do emails and I didn't do any calls, but my kids were streaming all their TV shows. There's better internet inside that tunnel than there is down the road from my house. But so yeah, you come out and then the thing for us, obviously UK is right-hand drive and the French, most of Europe is left-hand drive. So you just got to remember to switch over to the other side. But then you're on the highway. So last year when we did it, it was to Euro Disney, which is only an hour and a half's drive from LA. But we drove up to Bruges, which is a 3-hour drive, and we stopped at Dunkirk on the way. And I do find driving in France really cool. I really enjoy it. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just maybe it moves the French drivers better than South Africans. I don't know. Or as well as the South Africans, I should say. But it's a very scenic thing to drive. And obviously the countries, it's because it's not an island like the UK is. It's on the mainland. It's a lot of space. Maybe that's what it is. It just feels like South Africa in some respects. Bruges was nice. Probably a one-night kind of town. You come in for one night and you leave because there's so much else to see once you've done it. There's canals and all that kind of stuff. And then we drove down to Paris, which is a 3-hour drive as well. Slightly different route down. And my wife got us into a beautiful hotel, an apartment hotel, 2-bedroom with a fold-out bed. But we had a line-of-sight view of the Eiffel Tower. So we were there 2 nights. So both nights you could basically look out our window straight at the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, it's sparkling.
Yeah, so it's sparkling. Yeah, it was amazing. And it was only a sort of 20-minute walk for us. So Friday night, we drove into Paris. And I was very worried about taking the car into Paris because I'd heard stories about guys driving their big cars in Paris and getting damaged and all that stuff. But it was actually really fun. And in fact, the French have got some really interesting engineering. We talk about the Romans, but when we left on Sunday, we drove out. We went to go see the Paris of Versailles, which is amazing. It really makes Buckingham Palace look trivial. It's a beautiful palace. And when we left, we drove out, following the route, and we went into a tunnel that was like a 5-lane wide tunnel. So you can only imagine there's another 5 lanes on the other side to go the other direction. And I must have driven in that tunnel for a good 10 kilometers, 12, 13 miles. It was just, and we were in this big car and I'm looking at the roof going over my head. I'm going, that's pretty close to the roof. I've taken the roof racks off, but I was like, oh, that's pretty close. And you just drive and I was like, geez, this must have cost them an absolute fortune to build, but it's modern, it's new. It's got all the air fans and I said, probably 20 years old, but it was just such an impressive piece of engineering. And a lot of Paris is like that. You drive in and under tunnels and through and stuff like that. So we did Eiffel Tower on Saturday morning. And that's also a magnificent piece of architecture. I've done it a few times now and I don't enjoy it because I don't enjoy the heights, but the French actually do a really good job of getting you in there and picking you up. And the technology there as well. There's all sorts of tour guide apps you can get now and AR things you can do. And we took the elevator up and I actually wanted to walk down the stairs, but I had my kids with me, so I couldn't do that. But yeah, it was good. And then we just did the usual. We did like the thing called it the boat pass. It's basically a boat that goes up and down the Seine, the River Seine. So we went all around the stuff. After you've done Eiffel Tower for me, unless you do the Louvre, the rest of the stuff is, you've done Notre Dame. Notre Dame's still being rebuilt, so you can't even go there.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't, when we were there, trip before, we've done Paris a few times, but the time before before this last trip in October was about a week before it burned down.
Wow.
So we got in there and we'd seen it and stuff and then it burnt down.
It's not super fun, but I think it's Assassin's Creed, the video game modeling that was used to help reconstruct what it should look like. Wow.
Yeah. So funny story, actually, one of my trips to Paris was to Ubisoft. Oh yeah. They got a really cool office. It's like Google cool. And they're actually a great bunch of guys as well in the La Defense area, which is the sort of business district. And yeah, we played games and they got like a whole room of foam versions of all their characters that you can take pictures, like banner swords, but made out of foam. It's really cool. Yeah. So that was Paris. And then we drove back on Sunday, back on the train. It's easy peasy. And then you get back to the UK. And it's funny because again, you do your immigration on the other side. So when you get here, you just basically drive on the train and you come home. But it was amazing how going out of like driving Paris is like France, like free and fast and you just get everywhere. And I get back to the UK and it's raining, it's slow, there's roadworks everywhere. It was like, and everyone else has slept the entire time and I've been driving. But I use it as time to catch up on podcasts and watch TV shows and stuff like that. You just have your headphones on and you just drive. A good time to think. It was a great trip. And it's, as I say, it's a thing that if I look at our time here, it's one of my favorite things to do. Just pop across, because you can pop across to France for lunch. Expensive to do it for lunch, but it's a good trip. There he is, yeah.
Yeah, that proximity is super nice. That's why when I was on that work trip to Ireland, I was like, I might as well go somewhere else while I'm here. Because that's,
Well, yeah, then if you had to work, you could always work remotely. And I think I was chatting with one of the guys the day. He's in South Africa at the moment. And he's saying, like, at his age, to do 3 months in South Africa and do 9 months, do the winter of the UK in South Africa for 3 months, he can work remotely. So why, if you're going to travel, you might as well travel properly. And we were set up in this apartment. We could have probably stayed there for the week. I could have probably worked there the week. And then we could have done a bit more Paris stuff. But you travel to Ireland, why not do Rome? Because in Europe, once you're in, everything's pretty close.
Yeah.
We drove, because Bruges is in Belgium. So my mother-in-law was on a South African passport, but she obviously had a Schengen visa to enter into France. And we go to immigration into France. But now she was worrying, like, we have to stop somewhere for Belgium. And I was like, I don't think so. I think once we're in, like, it's so close. And I know there's certain, like Germany, for example, makes you go through the border between Switzerland, because Switzerland's not actually part of the EU. So freedom of travel doesn't exist there. It doesn't exist between the two. So you have to cross the border and show your passport, all that sort of stuff. But Belgium and France and all that stuff it's all linked together. So it's actually a lot of fun.
I've technically been to the UK, but that's only because, and I know there's other reasons for this too, but I drove from Ireland to Northern Ireland. So I've been in Northern Ireland, and that's the only part of the UK I've experienced so far. We were looking at, do we do London? Do we do Scotland? Do we do Italy? We did Italy, which next year is the Jubilee year.
Mm-hmm.
So Rome is supposed to be even more wildly crowded next year. So it's actually good to not accidentally plan it for 2025. So probably wouldn't visit unless you want to see the crowds. But
London's worth doing. Edinburgh's worth seeing if you haven't done it. It all depends on what you are into. There's a lot of history. The thing I always find fascinating about Europe is it's got so much history. It's old. There's so much stuff that's 1,000 years old, 1,200, 1,500 years old. So you can go somewhere, especially in London, you can walk around and find stuff that's 200, 300, 500, 800 years old. And I look at it from that point of view, because South Africa, for me, is only 300 years old. The country was discovered, inverted commas, in 1652. It only established the country in 1960. So it's really young. But it's obviously building the stuff that have been around for a long time. And we've had tribes and stuff like that. But if you compare it to the UK, which has been around 1,000 years, 1,200 years, it's a lot of stuff that's still standing, which is quite fascinating. 600-year-old buildings, 800-year-old buildings, which is, if you think about that architecture, that technology that survived so many years, obviously it's been maintained. It's still impressive.
Yeah. It's cool stuff to see. I like, the mix of the history and then modern museums and food and nature, if you can get it too, is always nice.
Yeah, my views on nature, I'd rather go sit in the bush if I could sit in the bush into a lot of these places. But I'll tell you one thing, the highlight of the trip for me was I had steak tartare 3 nights in a row, 3 different places. And I just love French food. And I can't believe the quality. I eat at a French restaurant there quite a lot. And I can't believe the difference in quality of food in Europe versus the UK. It's
really?
just, everything just tastes so much better. And it's, as I said, that's the unfortunate ramifications of Brexit. The things have definitely gotten worse. There was something I did want to chat to you about, which I'm reading this book by Daniel Suarez called Delta V. No, Delta V was the first book for me to know what it's called. Critical Mass. And Daniel Suarez writes very good hard science fiction books. So he's very accurate in what he writes. And this one is about, book 1 was about a asteroid mining. And I wouldn't call it a fast read. Like you really got to slog through it. But it's good writing. And then Critical Mass, so Delta V is the first book, Critical Mass is the second book. But there was something that I read today and I was like, I've got to talk to Heather about this. They are, obviously, it's obviously a few decades in the future. It's like 2030, 2040. which is not that far away.
Really
Yeah,
not.
this book was written probably 5 years ago, whatever it was. But he describes this concept of a crystal that these guys wear in their helmets with a see-through aluminum mask, obviously for the pressure and the oxygen and stuff. But they use AR screens to do the work. So very much I would say the concept of the Apple VR helmet, but now using this crystal to display it holographically in front of you as AR. But the reason why they do it, because they're in a space station and orbiting the moon, is so they don't have to send components up to the moon, to the space station, because obviously that'll cost you in load in your rockets. And it was the first time I was like one of those, so that makes a lot of sense. If you can actually start building display units using AR and VR or mixed reality, it's called mixed reality, which I think Mark coined many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You can cut down quite a lot of shipping costs. If you only have to ship one unit, you don't have to ship a screen. You have to ship obviously the display, but in theory, the crystal is the size of a big matchbox. That I'm actually quite excited about as a concept, and maybe gets away from even using glasses, because now if it's being displayed in front of you holographically, I don't know how, obviously it's a book and I don't know how they did it, but it was just this whole concept of, that would actually be really, that would change the whole technology landscape if you just could do something like that. Then you'd use it everywhere.
Interesting. I feel like holograms, was it a couple years ago where they came around again I feel like it comes in waves, all of the visual, the VR, the AR, and holograms. But
The problem with holograms, you got to write the photon on a molecule of air. That's the problem. Like, how do you do that? Because once you can do that, or you can charge the molecule so that it lights up. Like, see how an LED TV works. It's a whole bunch of little pixels little diodes that have been lit up to a shade of color. So if you could replicate that kind of mechanism onto molecule in the air, you could do a hologram. I think I got to remember I think they actually display the screens into the visor. I think that's actually what they're doing. Okay. I don't think it's floating, now that I think about it. But it is an interesting thing to think about. If you can solve the problem of not having to have all these screens, it would just solve so many other problems.
Yeah.
And really embed that technology. Then you'd use it everywhere. Or get it small enough that it fits onto your glasses lens. Have that resolution.
Can't even see it. Have you read The Three-Body Problem?
No, what's the three-body problem?
There's a Netflix kind of adaptation of it now, but it's I think the series itself is actually called like no, it has a different name, but The Three-Body Problem is the first book. It's a Chinese sci-fi author. I think you would find it very interesting. I binged them a few years ago, but lots of interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
it looks like there's 4 books. I'll read the book. I won't watch it.
I don't remember how many there were in the series, but yeah, there's also the Netflix adaptation, which gives you like kind of the watered down version. But
yeah, I'd rather read the book than watch the.
Yeah, it's some like hard sci-fi stuff, and there's projection stuff that would be. I think you'd find it interesting. Anyway,
how's your Star Trek thing going? Or you stopped watching?
I wouldn't say I've stopped. I'm paused right now. We're still in Voyager. But just gotten busy and other shows and other things. But it's a marathon. It's not a sprint with that much content, I think.
No, so now, a friend of mine made a comment yesterday, which I thought was quite interesting. Because Star Trek is this whole thing of that the whole human race gets on now. There's no internal conflict. The conflict is with other species. And made this observation, which I never really thought about, is that the whole reason that the Earthlings have aligned is that there's no need for capitalism. Because you've got replicated technology. So you can just replicate what you need. There's no need to fight for resources.
It's abundance, yeah.
It's all there.
Everyone gets what they need, yeah.
And I thought it was such a good observation I hadn't really ever thought about. So leave that as a thought to think about.
Chew on that one. How do we get to no one needs anything? What we need.
Super. Good to catch up. And have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Cheers, Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with your friends and colleagues. Help us grow our network. Please also check out our website at www.valuu.work and our product that's on there. It's something we worked really hard on. We hope that it benefits you.